Good evening. Great to be with you on a Sunday night, the fifth night of Hanukkah. A very interesting topic tonight, and we'll give people a little bit of a chance to find this live broadcast. And here we go. I'm going to see the questions here, but definitely looking for opinions on this question. Whoops. Goy. Is there something wrong with Jews using the word goy? Or non-Jews, for that matter, using the word goy? Now, the reason I thought to go live and address this topic is because I've got a beautiful note from a guy named Alan, who bought my book, Let My People Laugh, which has the world's greatest Jewish jokes right here. And he's not Jewish, he's Catholic, in fact. But he loves Jewish jokes, has collected Jewish joke books, has told many Jewish jokes, including some where, a lot of Jewish jokes use the word goy or goyim, plural for non-Jews, and we'll get into what that really means in a moment. But he said that a Jewish friend had told him that he shouldn't use the word goy. That goy is a little bit of a risque word, a little bit not politically correct. And I told him, well, from my perspective, you can absolutely use the word goy. In fact, it's kosher and funny for a goy, for a non-Jew, to refer to himself or other non-Jews as goyim. There's nothing wrong with that. And the reason there's nothing wrong with that is because the word goy means nation. That's what it means in the Bible. And in a moment where I'm going to go through a bunch of references in the Bible where the word goy is used. So we'll talk about how it came into Hebrew and into our understanding through the Bible and biblical Hebrew. And then what it really means. And what I'm going to make the case for is, even though there's a little bit of in-group humor where we compare ourselves, the Jews, to the non-Jews, and in the context of humor, may sometimes say goyim in a funny way, it is not an insult, and in fact, it's a compliment. It is a compliment, and it should be taken that way. It's not an insult. Even if it's true that some people might use the word as an insult, that is not its primary meaning, and it is a misappropriation of the word to use it in that way. So before I start making my case, let me see a few comments that have come in. Farmer Jan says, does it mean cattle? No, it does not. Goy means nation in the Bible. Walter says, God bless Israel and Croatia. Why do Jews worship on Shabbat, the day of Saturn? That's totally false, misunderstanding, and we don't worship anything. We observe the day of rest on Shabbos, the seventh day, as we're commanded to do in the Bible, in the Torah. Exactly. Miriam says it means Gentile or non-Jew. It is not an insulting word. It is just a descriptive word. Nora says it became a derogatory word, but it is not a bad word. It actually means nation. The right word in Hebrew would be gentil, or, the word that's come to be used as the equivalent in English. The polite word is Gentile. It's a very nice word, Gentile, related to a gentleman, a gentle person, a genteel person. And it's a nice translation. But let's get into this. Why goy is definitely not an insulting or pejorative term when used properly. Okay, so we'll just start in the Bible. The first use of the word goy in the Hebrew, meaning nation, is at Genesis 10:5. So to go back a little bit, these are the descendants of the sons of Noah. Noah, like Noah in the ark story. So after we go through the whole story of Noah and the ark and the flood, etc., right, all the humans that before Noah were destroyed in that flood, and so all of us are descendants of Noah. Noah had 3 sons. and we're all descendants of the families of Noah. And that's why the universal commandments, the 7 universal commandments in the Torah, are called the Noahide commandments, meaning they apply to all human beings because we are all descendants of Noah. So talking about who the descendants of Noah are, and this is where the 70 nations of the world gets established, which sort of in the biblical communication system means all the nations of the world. So Genesis 10 verse 5, from these, the islands of the nations, the Goyim, the nations were separated in their lands, each according to its language, by their families in their nations. Simply means all the nations of the world, right? So when you're talking about Egypt, eventually the children of Israel, you're talking about Syria, you're talking about Cush, you're talking about the Persian Empire, the Median Empire, the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, all of these empires, and then the nations that the empires conquered. That's what the word Goya means. It means nations. And perhaps the most famous use of the word is in Isaiah. At Isaiah chapter 2, verse 4, very, very familiar passage about the end of days, when the Messiah will come, when Mashiach will come. It will happen in the end of days. The mountain of the temple of Hashem will be firmly established as the head of the mountains. It will be exalted above the hills, and all the nations will stream to it. The Messiah will come, and then from Zion will the Torah come forth, and the word of Hashem from Jerusalem. Now, Isaiah 2 verse 4, he, meaning God, or his Messiah, will judge among the nations and will settle the arguments of many peoples. And in that day, they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift sword against nation. Lo yisa goy el goy cherev. Nation will not lift up sword against nation. When the Messiah comes, there will be no war, and so the nations will not attack each other. No nation will lift up a sword against another nation. So, what does Goy mean? It just means nation. And not only does it refer to non-Jews and non-Jewish nations, the nations that are not Israel, but, this is awesome, if we go to Genesis 12, verse 2, God speaking to Abraham, right? And Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are the patriarchs of the Jewish people. But Abraham had 2 sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael is understood to be the patriarch of the Ishmaelites, of the Arab nations, and ultimately the Muslims. And Jacob had 2 sons. Isaac had 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob fathered the Jewish people. We are the children of Israel. Jacob's name was changed to Israel. But his brother, his twin brother, Esau, in Hebrew, Asaph, is understood to be Edom, or the progenitor of Rome. And as a progenitor of Rome, he's a progenitor of all Western civilization, all the nations that emerged from the Roman Empire, if you will. But when God is talking to Abraham, and his name was originally Abram, it says, God, I'm going to change your name from Abram to Abraham. Why? Because you are going to be a father of nations, and I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. So right there it says, Ve'escha, I will make you legoy gadol. I will make of you a great nation. Right? So here we're talking about the Jews also get referred to in the Torah by the word goy. Right? So the Jewish nation is one of the nations, and so the word goy applies to us just like it applies to other nations. Now, when Jews say the goyim, we mean the nations, referring to not Israel, the other nations. Now, I'm here to say that if the word goy is properly used, it has a very complimentary aspect to it. It is a compliment. What do I mean by that? We were once at a restaurant years ago, my wife and I, and in that restaurant, it was in a resort area, and, the waiters and the waiters had name tags, and also the city where they were from, And so one particular guy, I remember his name, his name was like, let's say John Smith from Dayton, Ohio. And we got to know him, we were chatting with him, and we were calling him Dayton, because for whatever reason, Dayton stood in our minds, but not the name. And then when he came back, I called him Dayton. And I said, oh wait, I'm sorry, your name's not Dayton, you're from Dayton. He said, no, you can call me Dayton. And he liked being called Dayton, even though that was the name that he was from. And it's a kind of a compliment. You see, if you refer to someone who's American as, hey, America, or somebody who's English and you call him England, somebody who's Italian and you call him Italy, right? So you're saying that he embodies what it means to be Italian, what it means to be English, what it means to be Russian. You're calling him by the name of his nation. Now, you show me somebody who's embarrassed or ashamed to be associated with his nation. So I'll show you a nation that's dying, or at least a person for whom their nation is dying to them. Right? Their nation will become dead to them. This person, if you're ashamed of your nation is dead to you. If you could be angry with your nation, you could think your nation could do better. But if you love your nation and you want to be associated with it, it would be something that you could be proud of, to be known by the name of your nation. So to say about a goy, referring to, generally a person from another nation as a goy, meaning he is that nation, we're saying that people are associated with their characteristics. Now, where does this become pejorative? Now, just as I say to you, you should be proud of your nation, right? A person who is proud of his nation will want their children to marry within their nation. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not racist. That's not arrogant. That's how nations continue to exist, as nations. Of course you should love your nation and hope that your children will marry within your nation. If somebody doesn't care whether their children marry within their nation, again, that's a nation that is dying, or at least a nation that is becoming dead to that person. So sure, we, understand each other better. Jews understand other Jews better than we understand non-Jews. In the same way that you understand your family members better than you understand people who are not in your family. Why is that? Because the last thing that you would say about Jews and the Jewish people, if you want to be accurate, is that Jewishness is a religion. That's the most inaccurate description. What are the Jews? The Jews are a nation. The Jews are a tribe. The Jews are a family. A person who doesn't practice Judaism or even calls himself by the name of some other religion does not cease to be a Jew. He or she is still a Jew. A person who's not Jewish, who is not a Jew, who starts practicing Judaism, just starts practicing it, that person does not become a Jew. A non-Jew can become a Jew, certainly. You can go through a conversion. It takes work and commitment. And at the end of that process, you are a Jew. Now that means that if you don't fulfill the commandments that Jews are obligated to perform, you'll be held accountable for that. That's why rabbis discourage non-Jews from converting to Judaism, because right now you have a place in heaven just by following the Noahide commandments, which are relatively simple, just 7 commandments like don't kill, don't rape, don't steal, recognize that there is a God, don't blaspheme against God, don't tear a limb from a living animal and eat it, and establish courts of law. You follow those laws, there's a place for you in heaven. If you become a Jew, there's also a place for you in heaven, but you're obligated in hundreds of more commandments, and if you neglect them, if you don't keep Shabbos, for example, you're going to be held accountable for not fulfilling obligations that God, through the Torah, obligated you to fulfill. So, Judaism, meaning the practice of Judaism, of the religion, so to speak, fulfilling commandments, acting like a Jew, that's almost a superficial description and understanding of what a Jew is. right? We are a nation, we are a family, we are a tribe, and we remain that no matter what we practice. A Jew who stops practicing Judaism is still a Jew, and he's accountable for the mitzvahs he doesn't perform. And the non-Jew who wants to become a Jew has to go through a conversion, not just call themselves a Jew or start practicing Judaism. So, all of which is to say, you can be a goy, you can call yourself a goy, you can hear us call you a goy, and we are not making fun of you, and we are not speaking pejoratively of you. And if you're somebody, who is identified with his nation, because you identify with the positive aspects of the family and the nation, nationality that you were born into, wonderful. That's something to be proud of. I'll share with you some other uses of the word goy in the Bible, and then I'll take some questions. Here at Genesis 17, verse 4, God again talking to Abraham. When Abraham was 99 years old, Hashem appeared to Abram and said to him, I am El Shaddai, walk before me and be perfect. I will set my covenant between me and you, and I will increase you most exceedingly. Abraham threw himself upon his face, and God spoke with him, saying, as for me, this is my covenant with you. You shall be a father of a multitude of nations. Now, that means that Abraham is the father of the Jewish nation and many non-Jewish nations, including the whole Western world and all of Europe, for example, and all the countries of North and South America, as well as the Arabs and the Ishmaelite nations, right? The Arabs and the Muslim nations. Also, Abraham is a father to them. So why would we speak, if we are a nation like they are nations, that the word nation is disparaging? It's not. The word is not disparaging for that reason. Another example, Exodus 33, verse 13. And now, this is Moses talking to God. And now, if I have indeed found favor in your eyes, make your way known to me so that I know you, so that I may find favor in your eyes, and see that this nation, Goy, is your people. This specifically is referring to the children of Israel as a Goy, as a nation. Again, not a pejorative term, the same term we are applying to ourselves in the Torah. Okay, let me just take some comments and questions. Now, here's Farmer Yans being a jackass, saying, can I use the word kike? Yeah, no, you cannot. That's not a word we use among ourselves. That's not a word that we accept to use. That word is like the N word. So no, you can't use that word. You should not use that word, and you should know better. A more interesting word is yid. Yid was used by non-Jews as an insult about Jews, especially in the early 20th century when many Jews were coming to America. But the word yid, or yid, is certainly not an offensive term among us. It's what we call ourselves. So if somebody says it about us and they mean it in an insulting way, and we have very sensitive ears for that, then this is like the difference between black people using the N-word about themselves, among themselves, and don't like it that other people would use it. Similar with yid. If you're using it accurately and without meaning insult, then we'll hear that. If you're trying to give insult when you use the word yid, we'll hear that and, we'll remember. Okay. William says, having married into a Jewish family, my mother-in-law called me a yog. I don't know that word. All good, no offense taken, clever and funny. A yog. Is that like the reverse of goy, like sort of English written in the direction of Hebrew from right to left? That's interesting. I hadn't heard that. Somebody, I can't quite make out what your name is, J-I-M-D. Sal, I don't believe in naming anyone by their religion. I was called a goy once by dating the first of several Jewish girls when I was young. Again, listen, there are some Jews that will use the term, and they're making fun, and they are. So I'm not going to deny that it's ever used in that way. You can take it with a grain of salt that a tiny nation that has been persecuted so many times over thousands of years is always wanting to keep the non-Jews a little bit at a distance, And, because the Jews have been persecuted so many times, we're always kind of a little bit aware of like what our escape routes are. Right? You always have to have a plan like, well, what if the host nation turns on you? And since that's happened so many times and we've had to leave and set up shop somewhere else, so there's a little bit of let's keep us at arm's length. The word itself is not the pejorative, but the concern that the people around us might turn on us, that's very Jewish and comes up in our humor as well. Why don't I tell a classic Jewish joke that definitely pokes fun at this entire concept. This is a very well-known Jewish joke. In my book, Greatest Jewish Jokes, Let My People Laugh, Greatest Jewish Jokes of All Time, available on Amazon, link in bio. It is a bestseller on Amazon, thank God. But joke number 47 in my book, and the jokes are numbered. It's because there are lists at the front of the book of different lists of jokes that are good for a first date, a business lunch, a golf outing, a fundraising speech, a wedding toast, etc. This is number 47. Back when Jews were restricted from the New York Athletic Club, Milton Wasserstein was desperate to become a member. He changed his name to Martin Waters III, and he underwent surgery to minimize his large nose. He spent a year in England with a tutor to lose his New Yorkish Jewish accent. And upon returning, he spent another year getting to know members of this very waspy, upscale New York club. And finally, it was time to appear before the membership committee. And the chairman asked, "What is your name?" He said, "Martin Waters III." He says, "Are you married, Mr. Waters?" He says, "Yes, I am. Penelope and I have 3 lovely children. Babs is our youngest, Hunter is the middle child, and Martin Waters IV is our eldest." "And what is your education?" "Oh, the usual, Eton, Oxford. Young Martin is there now." "Very good. And what is your religious affiliation?" "Oh, why, we're Goyim, of course." Which works in the joke, but of course is totally inaccurate because Goyim refers not at all to religion or religious practice, though it is assumed that Goyim, right, members of nations other than Israel, are therefore by definition not Jews, right? So they are not obligated in the commandments that Jews are obligated in, and so they either practice no religion or some other religion, right? So that's included in the term Goyim, that they're not of our nation, but they're members of the other nations. But as I said earlier, the complement in it is to say that somebody's associated with the attributes of his nation, is saying that this is a person who embodies what is great about that nation, what is typical about that nation, what is recognizable about that nation. And you would hope that you are blessed to live in a place where you identify with the characters of your nation, the characteristics of your fellow people. Even people who were really condemned to live in the Soviet Union when they were oppressed, right, by the communist government of the Soviet Union, especially under Stalin. So that was not the national character of the people of Russia who were oppressed by the government of the Soviet Union. Right? What made them Russian is what was historically Russian about them, and that existed for centuries before the Soviet Union came along. So it doesn't mean that they were proud of the Soviet premier or the Soviet system, but they could be proud of their people. If that made them not only racist, but murderous psychopaths who want to kill any Jew that moves, we would hope that that's not, a Russian trait, and that, these were people who had succumbed to evil. We would be nervous about them as Jews because pogroms happened. So especially the Jews who fled the pogroms of Russia and Eastern Europe and escaped to America where there wasn't that kind of danger, still bore that kind of generational trauma of having been persecuted in that land. And a lot of the humor would reflect the difference between us and them. Let's get some more comments. Mayor Goldberg says the use of the words goy or goyim is usually in a negative connotation as it is used to put down when comparing non-Jews. Yeah, I'm saying it's often used that way, but that's not what it means, and it shouldn't mean that, right? If you're speaking in a good spirit, you wouldn't be using the word in that way. People arguing with each other. Look up. Just scanning the comments. Mark says, just because something sounds similar doesn't mean it is the same. I would certainly agree with that, but I'm not sure what you were responding to. Artie Sunday is saying exactly same as when one is a representative of a country, like in a beauty pageant or in the UN Assembly on the global stage. You get what I'm saying, Artie. That's exactly right. When you can be associated with the attributes of your nation in a positive way, it is definitely a compliment, to be called England or Italy or China as a member of one of those people. If it's used in a pejorative way, that's something different. There are many words that can be. Probably the most important aspect of Jewish humor is tone. You need a good joke, you need good writing. But then the way that it's delivered, there are so many jokes that are entirely in the way that it's told. All right, get another one here that might be appropriate for this discussion. Here's another one I've told recently on the page. This doesn't include the word goyim in it, but it's about the difference between Jews and non-Jews. 4 novice nuns are about to take their vows. They're dressed in white gowns. They enter the chapel for their symbolic marriage to Jesus. Just as the ceremony is about to begin, 4 Hasidic Jews come in, sit in the front row. The Mother Superior says, I am so honored you want to share this experience with us. May I ask why you came? And he says, so the way in English I'd say, so he says, we're from the groom's family. Now, in a real Hasidic accent, it's like, we're with the Chassan. We're with the Chassan. The Chassan, right, or the Chatan is the groom, or with that Yiddish accent, or with the Chassan. It just sounds that much more kind of in group and adds to the humor. This is nonsense. So look into how the Hebrews stole the Judean culture. When non-Jews seek to tell me about Jewish history, what is and what isn't Jewish history, I'll say to you, don't be a schmuck. You know nothing about our history. And the incredible depth of study and of retaining our history and studying it in the most extreme minutiae. We're so aware of our history. We didn't steal anything from anybody. And we have preserved the conversations among our patriarchs, between God and our prophets, God and our rabbis, God and our teachers, the evolution of our relationship to the land, the exile from the land, the return to the land. People who tell me who are not Jewish, or even who are Jewish but haven't, spent the... If you study Torah for 20 years, so you're a beginner. That's where I put myself. Okay, studying Torah hours a day, daily. Really, my journey began 27 years ago. So I feel like I'm, just working my way out of beginner status. People who don't put in that time and just hear from some influencer who's an anti-Semite, which is to say a Jew hater, and is going to tell you what Jews do or don't believe. It's nonsense. Okay, more comments. Does Goya mean female non-Jewish Spanish food? That's a legit question. Right? Goya is the name of Spanish brand of food. And yes, Goya does mean a female non-Jew. That is a legit word. And again, there's no offense in it. It simply means a female non-Jew. Let's see. Sir, when finding a spouse, is being pro-Israel more important than if the spouse is Jewish or not? No. No. In the sense that Jews need to marry Jews. In this day and age in which we live, how can you tell your kids who they can and can't marry, and you're going to write off 99.99% of the world? Yeah, exactly. And just as my mother said to me, and I say to my kids, Jews need to marry Jews. Because when Jews marry non-Jews, they have non-Jewish children, and you do too much of that, and for too many generations, and there will be no Jewish people. Right? Jews need to marry Jews. Can Jews marry converts to Judaism? Absolutely. And in fact, we learn from our sages that if a person makes an authentic conversion to Judaism, that person is a Jew, and it's prohibited to remind them that they were once not a Jew. Is there an issue of people converting to Judaism who don't do an authentic conversion? That's a whole topic for another day. But the bottom line is, if at the time that they're converting, they are not planning to take upon themselves the mitzvahs that a Jew is obligated to observe, like keeping Shabbos. So if at the time they're converting, they're not planning to keep Shabbos, that's basically what separates a conversion that's fake from a real conversion. Right? So if you're converting and you're obligating understanding that you're now going to be obligated to keep Shabbos, then there's many other things. You have to do an education. You have to do many steps. There's other mitzvahs like keeping Shabbos, in fact, all the mitzvahs. But that's kind of a simple demarcation. But Jews should marry Jews. So now, among the Jews, are there Jews who don't support the state of Israel and buy into the lies of the mainstream media, who every time they can spin a story about Israel, they do, and these people believe that? I would say don't marry such a person, because such a person is a fool. Does Israel make mistakes? Yes. Has the government of Israel made mistakes? Yes. Has the army of Israel made mistakes? Yes. Has Israel been under unbelievable, unrelenting pressure since its birth in a way that no other country in the modern world or any time in history has experienced? Yeah. And if you think that the citizens of New York would tolerate that New Jersey is lobbing rockets into New York hundreds a day, nonstop, and just take it because the world condemns New York when they respond and beat the heck out of New Jersey, yeah, they would not care, and they would beat the heck out of New Jersey. That's a very simplistic metaphor, but take it for what it's worth. Okay, I'm a retired physician. At many medical meetings, there were many Jewish physicians, and there were Shabbat services on Friday evenings. They always needed someone to light candles. I was the Shabbos Goy. Okay, it's a very interesting thing. The Shabbos Goy, right, on Shabbos, on Saturday, there are many things that Jews can't do. For instance, turn light switches on and off, or turn the air conditioning on and off. We can have timers, we can have things turned on before Shabbos begins. And let's say you left a light on by mistake, and a person is very sensitive and can't sleep in a room where there's a light. Now it's a big problem. Shabbos is going to be really impacted if this person can't sleep Friday night. But there's a non-Jew nearby, who could there's no problem with a non-Jew turning that light on or off. He could do it. Here's the catch. You can't ask a non-Jew to turn the light off for you. You can't. You can say to the non-Jew, I'm Jewish, I'm religious, I can't turn lights on and off on Shabbos, I left a light on, if it's on, I can't sleep. And then the non-Jew might well say, would you like me to turn it off for you? You'd be like, that would be so nice. If you did that, that would really help me out. But you can't ask. And when he comes in and does it for you, you should give him like a cookie or something, as a way of saying thank you. because you can't have someone do something for you that you are prohibited to do. But, if the non-Jew is in a sense doing it for their own benefit, because they get to do you a favor and be friendly, make a nice relationship, even receive a cookie. You don't say, come and receive a cookie. You just should give something generously, some kind of a gift afterward. But that is, a wonderful example of Jews and non-Jews working together to work within Torah law for a desired effect. I didn't know we were allowed to say schmuck. Finally, some good news. We can definitely say schmuck. There's so many Yiddish words, to describe people who behave in a clumsy manner. Shlemiel, shlemazel, the one who spills soup on someone else, the one who gets soup spilled on by someone. A schmuck, literally it has a meaning, referring to the anatomy, but really it just means somebody behaves in a foolish way. Be careful, you just use a mainstream media expression, lobbing rockets. It makes it sound innocuous, like lobbing a tennis ball. They shoot rockets. You're absolutely right. I apologize for not being precise when I could have. No, they fire rockets into Israel with murderous intent. That's what they do. And when we finally tire of it, but as my friend Rabbi Wolf said, something that for all of us to recognize, people of Israel, the children of Israel, so Jews everywhere, we are all the children of Israel. Those who live in the land of Israel, the modern state of Israel, you might call Israelis, but all Jews are the children of Israel. And those who love us and our nation, the Jewish people. We are living in a time of revealed miracles, so many among us, in the kind of frum world, right, the Orthodox religious world, can see signs that, we're getting towards the end of times. We don't know when it's going to happen. Could be tomorrow, could be many more years. We don't know. But the Lubavitcher Rebbe, I'm not a Chabadnik, but we have great love and respect for the Lubavitcher Rebbe. One of the teachings he gave over in the name of the previous Rebbe is that, after the Holocaust, we have suffered so much that we don't really need further, terrible trials and tribulations near the end of times. Mashiach can come now. And we're seeing things happen in the world. Israel was attacked on October 7th of the previous year, the worst attack since the Holocaust, biggest number of casualties of Jews in one day since the Holocaust, and unspeakable horrors, the way that women were violated, the way that hostages were taken, the way hostages are still being held. Please God, bring them home. And please God, end this war with a secure and lasting peace for the land of Israel and the people of Israel everywhere. But while all this has been happening, Iran, which was the biggest threat, to peace everywhere, has been exposed as a lying and weak nation. Their proxy, Hezbollah, decimated. Their leaders decimated. Operation Grim Reaper, unbelievable. Hamas, which literally means destruction, cruelty, evil and destruction. You could talk about the Palestinian people, who they are and what they want. That's a separate conversation. But the people who call themselves Hamas are nothing but evil. Terrorists, the worst people on earth, who have assured themselves a really dismal portion in the next world. And they've been decimated. And then Syria, suddenly their government is toppled by other forces within their country, and Israel took the opportunity to destroy its military capability, which was always, one phone call or one provocation away from attacking us, and has attacked us so many times. The miracles that have happened in this year are extraordinary. We've just gotten used to them. So many things have happened. But please God, we should be closer to peace. Believe me, there's no Jew, there's no Israeli that wants this war. We were attacked. And the day that the hostages are returned, the war will be over. Could be over today. Anyone who tells you that Israel is prolonging the war, check their sources. Okay, I'll share one more joke that might be appropriate on this evening when we're talking about, is the word goy appropriate, and the differences between Jews and non-Jews. I told this one recently, but it's good for this live broadcast. Joke number 123 in the book. As the late December flight lands at Ben Gurion Airport, Captain Mizrahi makes an announcement. Welcome to Israel. Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened until the aircraft comes to a complete stop. I repeat, do not stand up until the seatbelt signs have been turned off. For those of you still in your seats, I wish you a very Merry Christmas. And for those standing in the aisles, Hanukkah Sameach. Happy Hanukkah. Yes. And of course, there's the one, right? There's a series of jokes. Jerry Seinfeld has made one of them famous. He didn't make it up. But this idea that, two goyim, right, two Gentiles, are walking down the street, and one of them says to the other, how's business? And the second one says, great. Why is that funny? Because one Jew would never say to another Jew, how's business? He'd never say, great. You say to him, how's business? He would say, thank God. Or he would say, could be better. Say, There would actually be a lot communicated with that expression, words not required. Or fine, good, could be better, not so good, but never great. That would not happen. The other version of that joke, as a waiter comes to, two goyas, right, two non-Jewish women eating in the restaurant, and says, ladies, how's the meal? And they say, fine. Because the Jewish woman would normally say, it was cold, it was late, it was this, it could have been like that. We give a compliment to somebody, you did something fantastic, it could have been a little better if you did this or that, but it was fantastic, right? So that compliment sandwich around that, the little, suggestion that you give, that's just the way of the Jews. Okay, and then we'll just finish with this one, another classic on this subject. Number 128 in the book. A woman on the F train turns to the man next to her and says, excuse me, are you Jewish? And he says, no. A few minutes later, she turns to him again and she says, are you Jewish? And he says, yeah, no, I'm not. Are you sure you're not Jewish? I'm sure, lady. A few more minutes go by and she says, are you absolutely sure you're not Jewish? And he says, all right, lady, you're right. It's true. I am Jewish. And she says, it's funny, because you don't look Jewish. That's one that I can't even really explain. Either you get it or you don't. It's pretty funny to most Jews. And I think these days a lot of non-Jews get it too. And as my new friend Alan, who's not Jewish but loves the joke book, said, he says, I'm from New York. It helps. I would say that New Yorkers, especially Italians and Jews, understand all of each other's humor, just from that proximity. And probably that whole melting pot, late 1800s, early 1900s, Ellis Island, people from all the European nations coming over at the same time and setting up in Lower Manhattan, in Brooklyn. There was such a bleeding over, why is pastrami Jewish food? That's not a Jewish word. But, the Italians brought pastrami. The Jews learned how to make it. They put their own signature style on it, etc. Okay. Right. As our star clip says, the food is terrible and such small portions. That's what the Jewish ladies would say at the restaurant. If they ever get over this war, back to peace, they need to work on their humor on both sides. I think we have a pretty good start on the humor. Another complaint, by the way, I get sometimes about certain jokes that I'll share on the page is, what's Jewish about that? Just the names are Jewish? like one I just told. You can see it on the page about Herschel and Mitzi. And, she gets sick of him working all the time, being a workaholic, and tells him that she's leaving him. Or what she does. Well, I'll just tell the joke. And so she gets sick of him. He's never home. So she writes him a note and puts it on the dresser. And she says, "That's it. I've had it. I'm leaving you. Don't bother coming after me." And she puts that note on his dresser, and then she hides under the bed. A little while later, she hears the front door open. Herschel comes in. He goes to the kitchen, rummages around, comes up the stairs. And now she's watching from under the bed as he walks over to the dresser, picks up the note, and reads it. He takes out his cell phone, and he says, "She finally left me. Can you believe it? Sweetheart, from now on, it's you and me. Put on that slinky dress. Meet me at the Waldorf. It's going to be a night to remember and breakfast in bed." He hangs up, writes something on the back of the note, walks down the stairs, gets in the car and drives off. Mitzi comes out from under the bed, sobbing and furious. She picks up the paper to see what he wrote on the back of her note, and it says, "I saw your feet. We're out of ice cream. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Now, is that a Jewish joke, other than the fact that their names are Mitzi and Herschel? Yes, it's a Jewish joke, because it's told with and from a Jewish attitude, and I bet, $1 million that joke was written by a Jew at some point. And there's a reason why Jews are so overrepresented, at least in the history of Hollywood, film and TV, comedy writing. Maybe right now, not so much. And maybe the funny shows aren't as funny as they used to be. Maybe. Robin Williams, who was not Jewish, was once asked by a German interviewer, "Why do you think that there's not so much comedy in Germany like there is in the United States?" And Robin Williams said, "Did you think ever maybe it was because you killed all the funny people?" All right, my friends. And last comment from working class cleaner guy. I am not Jewish, but I think I get most of the jokes. This might be more a generational thing. I love all your jokes. Thank you, my holy brother. I hope you guys have enjoyed this discussion about the nature of the word goy, what it really means, and how, when used properly, it's a compliment much more than it is pejorative. Have a good night.